All right, welcome to the Revenant podcast. We are post-event. Alyssa Ford, which one do you go by? Because I see a different name here.
Yeah, sorry. On Zoom, it's still my maiden name, but Ford is my official last name.
Okay, so how long you been married? Tell me your story. I want to hear everything there is to know about you. And I saw doctor in your bio. I want to address you appropriately, but what's your story?
Yeah, well, first, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited and honored to be here. I love what you guys are doing with the Warrior Outdoor project, and what you did with the Revenant race. So I'm really excited to have this conversation and talk more. It's kind of embarrassing that I still have my maiden name as my Zoom name. I really need to fix that because I've been married for almost 3 years now. So that is something I need to update. I'll add that to the to-do list. Um, but a little bit more about me and my story. So the doctor part of my name, I'm a doctor of physical therapy. So that's kind of what I have my background in. I'm also a running coach and a strength coach. So I really love, and I've kind of dedicated my career to specializing in working with runners specifically. I'm a runner myself, so I just, eat, breathe, live running constantly. So I really have kind of specialized in working with runners, and I work a lot with runners that are overcoming injuries. So helping them get back to that more healthy, consistent training. But also working with runners more on the performance side of things. If they have specific goals that they're working towards, just learning about training in a way that's really sustainable and in line with what they want to do.
Now, I know you said you told me offline that you watched or listened to the last podcast. I'm sure you're dealing with like injuries, but like, are you now incorporating pickle juice and mustard into your
Oh
repertoire?
my God. So the pickle juice thing I've heard before. And I actually like sometimes I'll do pickle juice like after a long run. I just like kind of like the saltiness of it, and it's good electrolytes and all that. The mustard thing was new for me, and I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around it completely. It just seems a little gross, but I mean, if it's that much of a game changer, I'll give anything a shot.
I have a very vivid imagination, and my mind just goes to things that aren't real, but like, uh, imagine mid-marathon, like downing a hot dog. Like mustard, I associate with hot. You know what I mean? So it doesn't sound appealing at all. But hey, he said
Not
it
at
works,
all.
and for those cramps to go away mid 30 miles, it must have done something.
Yeah, hey, if it works, it works.
Can we talk about? I want to get into your story too, but let's talk about how we met, because that was like super last minute for you. Tell us that story.
Yeah, so it's kind of funny actually. I was back home after a long day of traveling. I'd been in the car all day, was pretty like wiped out. I was just in my bed, like getting ready to go to sleep. Knew I had like a long run on the schedule for the next day, so was in bed early, and just kind of scrolling mindlessly through social media, like we do. And I saw another guest that you had on the podcast recently, Carolyn Bryce, was posting about the race, the Revenant race. And I just saw her posting about it. I was like, oh, that's cool. She's racing tomorrow, whatever. And then she said something about like, oh, this race doesn't have a finish line and you can sign up for free. And I was like, what? Like, I need to learn more about what this is all about. So I ended up on clicking on it and reading more, and just was like, wow, this is like such a cool organization and such a cool cause, and I really want to be a part of it. So I ended up in hours before the race is going on, signing up to participate virtually, and kind of dedicated my long run to the Revenant. And something really cool, I don't think I mentioned this before, but something that I was thinking about a lot during that run. And I'm in the process of marathon training right now, and training through the summer is always really tough because it's just so hot and so humid, and it can really get to be a grind, waking up super early every weekend to get out for those long runs, being out there in the heat and humidity for hours. So I was reaching this point in my training where I was kind of struggling mentally a little bit. And then for some reason, this run, like my mindset just shifted completely, and I was in such a good headspace. And I think I was just like, I went into that run just feeling really grateful and just being like, this is so cool that I'm able to do this, that my body is able to do this and endure this type of mileage. And that was kind of the mindset that I sustained throughout the run. So thank you guys for the inspiration, but it was really cool just to tie like an individual experience and something that I was doing myself to a bigger cause, and thinking about these other people that this is benefiting and helping.
I'm humbled because you just never know what impact what you're doing is having on others, right? So that's just such an incredible story. And for now, I manage our social media, right, for Revenant as we grow, and if it scales, I probably won't be able to do that. So I'm enjoying being able to do that for now. And here comes like your name, a new follow, and then all of a sudden, like, hey, I'm doing this race, and I'm like, who is this woman? She's so enthusiastic, like just bringing her A game, and to a cause that you just like interacted with hours before. So thank you for your support. That means a lot. And we have one of these
Oh,
shirts for you coming in the mail. That's what everyone got this year. So it's
oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited to get mine. I'll wear it proudly.
that's awesome. And how far did you go that day? I'm trying to remember. Was it 18?
Yeah, I did 18 miles. So that was the longest run that I've done this training cycle so far too. So that was kind of a cool layer to the mix also.
Well, okay. So you what caused you to go into like physical therapy? First of all, I'm curious. Everyone's got a story behind like their why, right? So what was your story as to what led you down that path?
Yeah, no, great question. And so when I was in college, I studied exercise science. I was really interested in like exercise physiology, but I'd never really thought that I would go into the medical field. I was kind of more interested in going like sports nutrition or like sports psychology, somewhere in that realm. And then I tore my ACL in college and ended up having to go to physical therapy myself. And it just had a really positive experience with it, and was like, wow, this is such a cool way to be able to help people. And the part of it that drew me to the field the most was like when I was going through a really tough recovery, after a major surgery. I got to spend a lot of one-on-one time with my PT. So we
Mm,
really built a relationship, and they were really invested in my journey and my recovery, and kind of celebrated each milestone with me. And I was like, this is just such a different experience than I've had with other experiences in the medical field, where you go and see a doctor and you have 30 seconds to kind of ask all your questions, and it just feels very rushed. Like I just liked the relationship building side of things, and just being able to be there as part of the journey through each milestone, and kind of all the way to the finish line of the recovery. So that's what kind of got me started, was my own experience with PT. And I just really was like, this is an amazing way to be able to help people.
can you think of a story or at like what comes to your mind as to everything paying off? Like this is why I do what I do, you know?
Oh man, so many, so many. Honestly, I feel so lucky to be able to do what I do. But I had a really cool story. Recently, I had the privilege of working with this patient. He was in a really severe car accident, that he almost died in the car accident. Like it's a miracle that he was able to survive it. So he underwent months and months of therapy in a more inpatient setting before he came to me. And this is where, when I was still working in person in the clinic, now I treat more virtually. But he came to me as a patient in the clinic, and had come really far from the accident, but was still dealing with a lot. It was a very medically complex case. He was still dealing with a lot of internal injuries, as well as like orthopedic, more musculoskeletal injuries.
Yeah.
But he was just the coolest person that I'd ever met. And I was just so blown away by his mindset and his attitude from the beginning. And he was telling me, like, on our first day together, that when he was in the hospital in really, really rough shape still, like he had to relearn how to walk again, relearn how to do everything again. They asked him what his goals were on day one, and he told them he wanted to run a marathon when he's like not even able to walk. Like that's just how driven and motivated, and the type of spirit and attitude that he had. So when he came to me and he told me that story, I was like, all right, like we're gonna make that happen, like let's do it. Um, so I worked with him in the clinic for probably about 6 months, and he made just like leaps and bounds of progress, was just like the hardest worker in the room, just always put in 110% and went above and beyond as far as what he was doing outside of the clinic. So just being able to see his progress, like him making so much progress over such a short amount of time was really, really cool. And then he ran with me in the clinic for the first time. And, like it was just these sort of major milestones of things that like he was able to accomplish in such a short time, considering what he had been through. So that was a really cool story. And then when he was kind of ready to graduate from formal physical therapy, we continued on working together as in a coaching relationship. And he was able to train for and complete his first half marathon, and we ran it together.
No way.
Yeah, this past January, he did the Miami half marathon.
I thought you said it like this is your most recent story kind of thing. So I thought like, oh yeah, you'll have to let me know when he completes his first event and then it's already done. That's insane.
Yeah, no, he did it. Yeah. So half marathon, checked it off the list. Now full marathon is the next big goal.
Listen, I know there's HIPAA and stuff, but if he's willing to, you should get him on this podcast because that is the kind of stuff
Yeah.
like heart and spirit. I keep hearing that as you talk, like the mental aspect of how what Revenant did for you and what this guy's mental and his spirit did for him. Like, how do you, as like the doctor role is probably more scientific a little bit, I suppose, but how do you incorporate that aspect of it? Because it seems to be a very real aspect in your life, and I would say it is objectively a real aspect, but how do you incorporate that or think about that?
Yeah. Yeah, no, great question. And I think it's an important thing to talk about. And I really think like, especially in any sport, but in a sport like running and in endurance running, when you're out there just for hours and hours, that the mental toughness or mental resilience, the mental side of things is huge. So I make that a point of talking about that with any of my clients, whether they're overcoming an injury or whether they're just working on performance goals. I feel like the mental side of things is really huge. So I feel like regardless of what somebody's going through, what their starting place is, what their goals are, my role as a coach, it's important to have a relationship that's built on open communication and honesty and trust. And that by having that foundation set early on, then we can talk about these things that are kind of challenging to talk about, the mental side of struggling with an injury or with overcoming a challenging distance in a race or whatever. So I think that's something that's really important. And I just make it a priority as something that I like to talk about with my clients, and that I'm still constantly working on myself as well. I feel like that's one of those things that's always going to be a continued work in progress.
Yeah.
But I think as far as mindset wise, like the thing that I try to kind of instill in my athletes is that because I think a lot of people that are gravitated to the sport of running tend to be very high performers and put a lot of pressure on themselves to be competitive and perform well and hit these challenging goals. And sometimes that pressure can be counter, work against working towards those goals. It can have the opposite effect of kind of sucking the joy out of things, and it starts to feel more like a job. And it can take away from the joy and the enthusiasm and the passion and the things that like draw people to the sport in the first place. So something that I like talking with my runners about a lot is just like accepting that setbacks and failures are going to be part of the process. And anytime that you're working towards a goal or doing anything worthwhile, like there is going to be setbacks and there's going to be failures, and that's okay. It's not, it's part of the process. Failing is part of succeeding. It's not like an either or type thing. So just approaching those failures or those setbacks or those whatever it is with the mindset of okay, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? How can I apply what I learned from this so that I can do better the next time something like this pops up?
I come from a journalism background, so that's what I did professionally for a little bit, was like on air news and storytelling and things like that. So even even now, that's a little bit why we're doing this podcast. It's what I can do as a civilian in this like veteran space is tell stories. It's bringing myself to the table. That's what I realized is kind of my role. And every epic story has like everything seems impossible until it isn't, you know. And that's like usually the end of the movie or the toward the end of the book, like the climax. I think that expectation management is so huge. We want it to be, you know, easy from the start, and the journeys worth taking aren't, you know. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
why
love that. That's so cool. And I feel like storytelling is such a powerful way to, connect people and have somebody feel like part of a community or communicate an important message. Like storytelling is what brings us all together.
100%. That's how we've communicated since the dawn of humanity, you know.
Right.
um why do you run? You talked about the joy of it and things. Like, why do you do it?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I think there's a few different layers to it. I think the thing that initially attracted me to running was because it was just something that I really enjoyed. My mom is a runner, and so I grew up watching her run, and just the dedication and commitment that she put into it. And it was something that we did together occasionally when I was growing up. So it was just like a cool way for us to like share time together. And then as I got older, it was just something that I did for myself. It was something that I just really enjoyed. It was a great way to just have that time to myself and clear my head. And it just felt like no matter what else was going on in my life, like going for a run was a great way to just kind of like press the reset button, clear my head. I would always feel a million times better after going for a run. So that's what kind of initially attracted me to the sport. And now as I've been running for longer, and my relationship with running has kind of evolved and changed over time. I think a really important part of it to me is the community. I love the running community. I think it's the most amazing community out there. Just so being able to connect with so many other amazing people that are share the same love for the same sport is something that's really important to me too. And I just think there's something also really valuable and really cool in like pushing yourself and challenging yourself to do something new or do something hard. And there's a lot that you can learn about yourself, doing something like that. And just the being able to see the fruits of your labor pay off, and just seeing that. And I feel like part of the joy is in the journey itself too, like, okay, consistently putting in the day in and the work day in and day out, and then seeing like, oh wow, like last week 10 miles was hard, and this week 10 miles feels a little bit easier. And like just seeing that progress and that change over time, I think is really, really cool and really satisfying.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I don't know what the timeline is. You take this how you want it, but whether that's from like who you were 15 years ago, 10 years ago to who you are now, or just recent history, but what is something you feel like you've learned about yourself over whatever period of time resonates with you, I guess.
Yeah. Oh man, that is a good question. I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot.
And I'm
I
sure
think
life contributed to that learning as well. Maybe not just running, but you know, about yourself, not just that 10-mile mark being easier, but you get what I'm saying?
yeah, no, absolutely. Um and I think it kind of like ties into a little bit what we were talking about before about, like the just taking the pressure off and running because you love it. I really think that like I used to think and that very much fell into the mindset of kind of like more is better. Like I needed to be training all the time and I needed to be running as fast as I could. And like those are the things that I needed to do to get better. And like, oh, taking a rest day, I would feel guilty. Like just all of these things that now I know, I was just like, no, like that's not, you don't have to do that. You can have a healthy relationship with running and a balanced relationship with running in other areas of life and still be successful in the sport. And I think that I truly honestly believe that if you love what you're doing and can celebrate the process and the journey and the small kind of wins and accomplishments along the way, that success will follow. So just, learning to take the pressure off and focusing on that joy and that love that initially attracted me to the sport has made me love the sport even that much more, and just, find a healthy balance and a healthy relationship with it.
And it's made you more successful, I imagine, as well with it.
Definitely. Right? Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Give it up to get it. Like, I'm going to give up the need for success in this area and then just focus on loving it. And then before you know it, you're successful. It's funny.
Exactly. It can feel very counterintuitive, but I think that's the way to go. I really do.
We talk, I mean, if you caught episode 1, I don't know how far back you listened, no pressure, no expectations, but we talked on that episode that we're trying to, as an organization, and especially with this race, so next year we're going to do some like competitive divisions because people said they wanted that. They liked having the finish line, that 30-mile mark, right? So we'll do that. And then we're going to have that Revenant undefined experience still, but more like a defined, undefined experience for people to go out. Because we did have a handful of people just run as far as they could go. One guy went 22 miles, and previously 17 was the furthest he'd ever ran. And I think you caught that in the last podcast. So, but we've said from episode 1, like, we want this to be about like remembering who you are. And when I heard that language like downloaded onto me, it was, I wanted to fill in the word discover who you are. Like, I felt like that's what athletics and fitness and stuff was to me. It was like, I got to learn, like, discover who I am. But we already are. It's almost like you're in the block, right? And you just need to like let life kind of chisel that away. And so that just even remembering who you are almost has a more restful approach to it. And then if you love being competitive because you love being competitive, that's different than being competitive because you feel like you need to be, right?
Totally.
So it's funny how when you just like go down to the atomic level of where do our thoughts come from? What is our motivation? I feel like everything you're saying is so in line with what we stand for. So I love that you said all that, is kind of what I'm saying.
No, I love it. And I think, there was a reason why we ended up connecting, and, I feel like we attract like-minded people. So it makes sense that, like, I love everything that you guys are doing, and it really resonated with me. So I'm glad that, you feel the same way about the things that I'm saying and the way that I approach the sport, and, the, not just running, but just, being active and doing the things that you love.
Yeah. I went for a jog because I have not run a ton. And that's a little ironic for me to be the host of this because I'm not like this big runner or cyclist, but it almost, as a journalist, it kind of gives me that curiosity, about what is going through people who consider themselves runners' minds. But I went for a jog just a few weeks ago, and I remember just starting off and thinking about like split times and things, and in mid-run I was like, wait, who cares? I'm out here. I'm moving my body. It doesn't matter, as I'm just moving. That's the most important thing right now. And that just changed the whole running experience for me. I was like looking up at the sun rays and hearing the birds, and it just like it made everything like alive, if that resonates with you. But
yeah, no, completely. And I think that that's like a really powerful thing to talk about too, right? And that's, I think, something a lot of runners and other athletes in other sports can relate to, is that sometimes we get so fixated on the numbers and the pace and oh, I have to, be running this speed and whatever, that it distracts us from the joy of it. And sometimes it's nice to just like not even think about that stuff and just like enjoy being outside and getting some fresh air and moving your body and taking in your surroundings. Like that's there's something that can be so like magical to that sometimes.
yeah, For sure. So I want to hear about your business because I want this to be a platform that elevates like that ethos that we're talking about, but also we just think people are so valuable, like and not even in what you do, but just in who you are. Like when I got on this call and you had this big smile, I was like, wow, this woman is amazing. I don't even care what she says after this. Like, I already know that she's got so much joy. But in that
You.
same like breath, then we want to like lift people up. And so tell us like what you have going on, how people can get in touch with you. Is it local? Is it national? Like, give us the whole rundown, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much. And yeah, so I own my business is called Resilient Running. So I work specifically with runners, and I do work with a lot of runners that are coming back from injuries and looking towards getting back into more healthy, consistent training. And currently I'm only treating virtually. So whether someone is overcoming an injury or just looking for more help on the performance side of things, we'd work together completely remotely, completely virtually. So kind of open to anyone, anywhere in the country. They don't have to be local to me in Atlanta for us to be able to work together. So that's kind of what I do. I also I do a lot of strength training programming for runners. I feel like that's an area that a lot of runners can feel a little intimidated by, or just, it's kind of out of their wheelhouse of what they know. Like runners just like to run. So strength training can feel like this kind of foreign,
How
foreign thing
running
that
feels to me as a strength trainer. So
there we go. There we go. You're like, what is this running thing all
yeah,
about?
yeah, we should work together and find that happy balance, right? But yeah,
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. So I love helping runners learn more about strength training and finding a way to fit strength training into their schedule, because I do feel like it is a very um, valuable piece of training, both for reducing injury risk and also for improving performance. Like strength training is kind of a vital piece to that. So just helping runners learn more about strength training in a way, and finding a way that they feel comfortable with it and that it fits in with their schedule and their goals and everything else that they have going on. As far as how to connect, Instagram is probably the best way to reach out. I love connecting with fellow runners on Instagram. So my handle is at alyssaford.dpt. And I also have a website, resilientrunningpt.com, or anybody can shoot me an email, alyssa@resilientrunningpt.com.
that's awesome. Did that just happen? Was that like something that as you did your doctoral work that just made sense to incorporate, or was that something you had a goal of doing all along? What was the genesis of that aspect of what you do?
Like going more towards working specifically with
Yeah, like
runners.
starting, or is your PT through that business?
Yeah, so I've kind of combined, yeah, so everything is done through
That is
my business. So
practice.
that is my practice now.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay. I thought they were separate for some reason, like the PT you did in this setting, and then you also would bring people over into the running setting. Tell us more. That's amazing.
Yeah, so when I first started my own business, when I first started Resilient Running, it started as kind of like a passion project and something that I was just doing on the side. I was working full time in the clinic at the time, and I really enjoyed that too. I love being face to face with patients and having that in-person interaction. So this was really just a passion project, something I started on the side, but it was something that honestly, the reason why I started it, I love working with runners. I love the running community. And I just felt like there was a need for it. I talked to so many runners that just had really frustrating experiences in the medical field, or with medical practitioners, just being told things like, oh, running is terrible for you, you're destroying your knees, like, oh, you should just stop running, just like these really horrible, like negative, damaging things. And I'm like, no, like that's just not the case. Or going through a course of physical therapy and still not seeing the results that they wanted, and continuing to have pain when they would run, or when they would run a certain mileage. So just, that kind of incomplete incompleteness to their rehab that's limiting them from being able to train and enjoy the sport in the way that they wanted to. So I was like, there's just really a need for this. So my very first client was actually one of my best friends. Her and I have trained for and ran a marathon together, but she used to live across the street from me. So she was training for a race and having problems with her knees, having knee pain, and she was able to run like a certain amount of mileage, but after let's say 6 miles, then she would start to have knee pain, and she was trying to race for a marathon. So there was a big, discrepancy between what she was able to do and what she wanted to do. And she went to the doctor. The doctor told her, stop running. It's bad for your knees. She was like, forget that. I'm going to keep running. Went to physical therapy, got a little bit better, but was continuing to have pain with these longer distance runs. So she ended up talking to me about it, and I was like, yeah, I'll help you out. Like, let me come over. We'll do an evaluation. So we did it in her living room. I think she paid me in wine. So, that's a great form of payment.
Acceptable currency in your business, I imagine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Would still accept that as payment for sure. But just like was able to make such a difference for her, just by working together and collaborating. And she was doing a lot of the right things already. It was just kind of fine tuning it and making it more specific to the goals that were important to her. So after that, I was just like, wow, like this is really something that like I could see myself loving doing, and I feel like there's a need for it. So I decided to go for it. And then it was something that I did on the side for a few years. And then recently, my husband and I moved up to Atlanta for his job. And I was starting to look into other job options and everything, leaving the clinic. And he was like, why don't you, instead of jumping right into getting a new job in the clinic, just take this time to focus all in 100% on your business and kind of see what you can do with it. And I was like, that sounds great. Like, why not? Might as well see what I can do. So that's what I've been focusing on solely for the past few months.
That's amazing. Awesome to have a support system like that when you're starting a business. Not
Oh my gosh.
invaluable. I've started businesses before, and to have people have your back is a really big deal. So props to him. Does he like to run?
Yeah.
You guys like run together? Is he active like that? Is he more of a strength guy like me, or?
More of a strength guy like you. I would love for him to get to run with me. He's mentioned it a couple times, like in passing. We went to a race last year that had, and at the expo they showed like the medals for the upcoming years, and the one for 2024 was like really cool. So he's like, maybe I'll run the half in 2024. So I've been holding on to that hope, but so far it hasn't happened yet.
Well, maybe you can bring him next year and he can do the undefined. Whether he goes 100 yards or 100 miles, that's up to him at that point, right?
I think that would be a really cool experience. We both, like I know you guys believe a lot in the power of spending time outdoors and being in nature, and that's such a cool thing that you guys do and help create those experiences for the veterans that you work with. So I absolutely love that you guys do that, and we're really into hiking and doing that sort of thing. So I think that might be a good entry point to get him on board.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, before we close, I gotta know, because you mentioned a handful of things, probably just drive you nuts to hear people and see people on social media saying certain things about running and about training. I could see the cringe right there too. What are some of those things? Like, for instance, I saw on one of the running groups, hey, don't stretch before a run, and like everyone had an opinion about that. And I'm sitting here as a non-runner, like, what is the accurate, where do I even get the right information? Is it good for you to stretch beforehand or not? I went for a run the other day, or this was when I started training for Revenant, and I pulled my hamstring. I sprinted a little too much, but I said, man, I should have stretched. And not like, what are some of those stigmas you come across? Mental, physical, emotional, whatever it might be.
Oh man, there's so many of them. And it's hard too because, we talked a little bit earlier before getting on the call. It's kind of like a love-hate relationship with social media. Like I feel like it's a great way to be able to connect with people. And I love that side of it. I love the community side of it and the supportive side of it. But I just feel like there's so much information out there, and it can be really hard to kind of sift through and figure out what information is good information, and first of all, and what does this information even apply to me and my specific situation. So it's hard. There's a lot there's a lot out there. I don't know. The things that kind of drive me crazy as far as what is still being spread on social media is well, the stretching thing is a good one, is a good example, because I feel like that's something like runners feel like they need to stretch before they run, and that's really something that like isn't substantiated by the research at all. There's no, which
Really?
is crazy. Yeah.
That was accurate.
So yes, you were right. You're doing it right. You're good.
Crazy.
If you don't want to stretch, don't do it. But I think it is valuable to have like a good warm up before you go for a run. So you can have some like dynamic movements and dynamic stretches as part of your warm up routine, but you absolutely don't need to spend 15 minutes extra before and after your run stretching and doing all of that. So for my approach to stretching is, if it's something that you like and it feels good, then do it, but it's not going to be the thing that makes or breaks it with your training.
Okay. You know, that's just super interesting. I feel like there's a lot more to overcoming a lot of those stigmas. Just to get people in the right headspace, like stop caring about things that don't matter, let's care about
Exactly.
things that do matter. So what would be your
Yeah.
final words to anyone watching this? I mean, wherever they're coming from, it might be a veteran in their family, it might be a runner, it might be a cyclist, it might just be someone who caught us on Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But um, what are your final words, Alyssa? I'm really curious.
Um, oh man,
I feel like you
I
got
don't
a nugget
know.
there. I feel like there's something that's about to come out. It's gonna melt some people's hearts or blow some minds. No pressure.
Oh my, that's so much pressure. I don't know. I got nothing for it. No, no,
What
I
would
just want
you
to
say to
say,
people? Yeah, go for it. Go for it. Let's hear it.
no, sorry, what were you
Nope,
saying?
nothing. No, I'm cutting off
Oh
your.
God. I was just gonna say thank you again so much for having me on, and I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I love what you guys are doing. Again, I think it's really, really cool. So for anybody listening, get involved. I hope to see you at the Revenant race in person next year. And that's all I got.
That's awesome. I appreciate being on the podcast. Thank you.